Hello and welcome to First Page Fridays. I'm April Davila with Sit Right Here, and today we are going to be looking at somebody's first page. We're going to read it through. I haven't even read it through yet. We're going to read it through together, and then we're going to edit it, do a live edit of the material so that we can all learn from each other's writing. I have found this to be tremendously useful in my writing coaching, so hopefully you will find it useful too. Don't forget to like and subscribe, follow the channel, and if you'd like to submit your page for a round of feedback, there's a link to do that in the show notes below. So let me shrink myself down here and get out of the way, and we'll get started. So first we just do a read through and see what we've got. In today's technology, it seems the only way to find love is through a dating site. That is where I met my husband, Destiny. The problem with dating sites is that you really don't know who you're talking to. People from all over the world steal photos from the internet and make fake profiles using stolen photos. I experienced this many times, which is exactly how I met my husband. I'll never forget the day we met on the dating site. It was late April of 2022 and a beautiful spring day. I had been a widow for some time after my late husband, Joe, passed away from cancer, leaving me and my two youngest sons, Christian and Anthony, all alone. Some say it was too soon to start dating, but unless you've walked in my shoes, it's hard to know that feeling of emptiness after losing a spouse. I missed waking up and having coffee together. Even when I knew he was dying, I missed getting up in the morning and taking care of him. At least he was still with me, which was somewhat comforting until he was gone. My life felt so empty and alone without him. After some time, I decided it was time to move on. I tried several dating sites, but I kept getting catfished. I finally decided to try one more site. I met a couple of local guys, but nothing was working out. I did meet one guy, Vince, who seemed to have a wonderful personality. We had a few dates at my house when the boys were out. Okay, so the first page of a book is usually about 250 words. So that's how many words we're working with here. And if you submit yours, that's how many you will get to submit. And don't send more. We will cut you off. We will delete everything after 250 words. So the first 250 words of this story, I don't have a title. I don't have a genre. I don't have anything to work with. But if I had to guess, this is either literary fiction or memoir. The specificity of it makes me think perhaps memoir. And let's see where to start. So generally on our first page, we want to really we want to hook people with who the main character is, and ideally put them in a scene. So this doesn't have a lot of scene. This is kind of a lot of what I would call introductory, which is fine. We can work with that. But it tends to be more engaging when we're in a specific time and place. So when I got to here, it was late April of 2022 and a beautiful spring day. So now I'm starting to feel the immediacy of what's actually happening. Whereas this kind of feels like throat clearing a little bit. We do get some interesting information. So let's just start. We'll just do the line edit and then we'll talk larger ideas later. In today's technology, it seems the only way to find love is through a dating site. Now, I would say in today's technological world, and I need to turn on my editor here. Okay, technological world, because we're not to say in today's technology is a little awkward. So in today's technological world, it seems the only way to find love is through a dating site. Okay, that's good. It's not like super hooking me in as a concept, but it's a solid statement to open with. That is where I met my husband, Destiny. So that is referring to a dating site. That is where I met my husband, Destiny. It's a little bit awkward. That is how. So because you say to find love is through a dating site, you could say, I would suggest you say, that is how I met my husband, Destiny. I'm also curious about the name Destiny for your husband. I'm not going to make any assumptions on gender or identity, but it's an unusual name for what I'm assuming is a man, since we're using the term husband. The problem with, and so let me just say too, that when we have something that's a little unusual, it's an opportunity. So my hope is that Destiny as a name is cluing us into something about this character. And this would be a great place to put that. If you can hint at I don't know, what makes this character unique? Because that's the other thing we want to do in our first page is introduce us to the characters. Okay, let's move on. The problem with dating sites is that you really don't know who you're talking to. People from all over the world steal photos from the internet and make fake profiles using the stolen photos. Now we have the word photos twice here. So I would at least change one of these to images. People from all over the world steal photos from the internet and make fake profiles using the stolen images. I experienced this many times, which is exactly how I met my husband. Okay, so what this is saying is that this makes me think that your now husband, Destiny, stole a photo and like tried to pass himself off as someone he wasn't. So be careful in how you word that. Just know that that's how it's landing. If that's not what happened, the other way I could read this, which isn't quite landing, but what I think you might be trying to say, said I experienced this many times before I met my husband. So implying that like your husband was like the only honest man that you met. As it's written right now, this would imply that your husband is dishonest because you met him. This, which is exactly how is referring to people making fake profiles and using stolen images. So just be aware of like how that's landing. If it's actually pretty interesting if you're saying this is exactly how I met my husband, because what you're saying is he was faking being someone else and I fell for him. And like in my mind, oh, okay, that's an interesting story. But it might not be what you're trying to say. So I'm not going to edit it because I'm not sure which you're trying to say. I guess I would just make a note here to be aware of how this lands. Okay. I'll never forget the day that we met on the dating site. Now, the interesting thing about this is that when you meet on a dating site, it could be any day, generally speaking, right? Unless it's like a Christmas or Easter or New Year's or I don't know, if there's some significance to the date, then that might change the interaction online because people, for instance, who are online on Christmas are probably really they don't have anyone else in their life, and so that really speaks to like how you would meet someone. But to just if it was April of 2022, that there's no like specific date that wherein it would really matter. So I'm wondering why it matters that it was a beautiful spring day when you met online. I'd love to tie those ideas together, but again, my suggestion would be to come in a little bit later on this one. Excuse me. And I think you could be a little more specific about a beautiful spring day. Beautiful spring day is fine as a placeholder phrase. And when you come back and you're doing revisions on this, I would suggest finding some specificity. What made it a beautiful day? Or what makes it stand out other than like, yes, it's the date you met the new husband on the dating site, but why do you remember what the date is? That's the question that is interesting here. So it was late April 22. I'm just going to play around with this a little bit and take it for what it's worth. I remember because blah blah blah. And this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to tell us, where are you in the world? What's the weather like? I mean, if you want to get that in there, it may not be the most important detail, but where are you in the world? Who are you? Give us a detail about you, which you're about to do. So we'll get to more of that. When we know when this is, so where, when, those are usually the questions that I like to answer in the first line or two. So it was late April of 2022. I remember because it was unseasonably hot and I was watering the yard, or it was unseasonably cold and I was curled up on the couch with my cat. Just, there's opportunities there to give us a little bit of detail. I'd been a widow for some time after my late husband, Joe, passed away. And here I should note that I am not a copy editor. I will put in things like commas and whatnot if I notice them, but my experience is in story and line editing. But I do know you need a Joe, comma after Joe, you need a Joe. I've been a widow for some time. And again, this phrase some time is very vague. In this first page of your story, this is where you are sucking your readers in. You want to be as specific as you can while still being natural. So I'm going to make something up. I've been a widow for, let's say, 3 years. And if you want it, there's also opportunity to give some detail here. So you could say a widow for 3 years, 1 month, and in 2 days. Like, if that kind of specificity would speak of someone who's not good at being alone, right? If they are literally counting the days that they have been widowed, that's a different character who's like, oh, I've been widowed for about 3 years. So consider how you present the details here. I'd been a widow for 3 years after my late husband Joe passed away from cancer. Again, opportunity for specificity here. Lung cancer, lung cancer, brain cancer, testicular cancer. These you don't have to drop all the details in here right now, but even just hinting at what it was will start to lay the groundwork of the story. So specificity, get the detail in there. Leaving me and my two youngest sons, Christian and Anthony, all alone. Great. I would wonder too if we even really need Joe's name yet. You want to be careful on your first page of overwhelming readers with a lot of names. So far we have Destiny, we have a first person narrator, and now we have 3 more names to keep track of. That's 5 characters in less than 100 words. It can be a lot. So often I will advise, and again, your story, you do what works for you, but I would advise that you could just say, after my husband passed away, from lung cancer, leaving me my 2 youngest sons all alone. So this implies that there's other sons, which is an interesting detail. But I think these are details that you can get in later. So I would just say my sons all alone. And then you can get into the details later. When Christian and Anthony become important to the story, you introduce them by name and you give us a few details about them. Later, as we learn a little bit more about the husband, assuming we do. If we don't, you definitely don't need his name. But assuming we do learn more about him later, you can introduce his name later as you're talking more about the late husband. Right now, we're just setting the scene, and it's okay to just say, my husband who passed away, because that way we can keep the emphasis on Destiny, who is the new husband. And actually, thinking of that, you might consider adding like new husband or current husband. Again, which word you choose will say a little bit about your narrator. Because if someone says my current husband, I'm thinking this is someone who's been married more than a couple times. If someone says my new husband, then that is someone who is starting a new relationship after one has ended. It's a different kind of character, at least as I'm reading it. Okay, so some say, I would be specific. My mother said it was too soon to start dating, or your friends. Again, try to avoid a bunch of names, but a little bit of specificity, because some people is very vague. You can start to introduce a little bit of like the conflict of the story by like who disagrees with her on things, who makes her life difficult. I'm assuming this is a her. Actually, again, that's another assumption on my part. I should not assume. So it's first person. My mother said it was too soon to start dating, but unless you've walked in my shoes, excuse me. So this is a switch into second person. You've. So my mother said it was too soon to start dating. I would keep it as, but she'd never walked in my shoes. She didn't know the feeling of emptiness. She had never walked in my shoes. Again, the switching to you is it's an awkward little in a story that is in first person. So she had never walked in my shoes. And then that raises the question of like, okay, so this narrator's father must still be alive. If it's the mother, which I'm totally making up, who it could be someone else. But the specificity here will help. So if you said my friends, you would say, I know it looks like we need to lose the comma there. You could say they had never walked in my shoes. It's hard to know that feeling of emptiness after losing a spouse if you've never experienced it. Now again, I'm wondering, like, you brought us into a specific day in late April 2022. What's happening on that day? I think this scene would be much more grounded if you could tell us what was happening the day you logged on and met the new husband. So I remember because there was a big storm and I was curled up with my cat and the lights went out and I was in the middle of chatting on one of the dating apps when I lost it. Like, tell us the actual scene of what happened here. Because here we're just kind of summarizing, and summaries are not the most engaging of story intros. So think about what you could tell us about this day and then kind of trickle in this information through the specific time and place of what happened in April of 2022. I missed waking up and having coffee together even when I knew he was dying. So this is all like, I'm not discounting it at all, but I just wonder if these are details that you could get in later in exchange for getting some solid concrete scene work onto the first page. Same with this scene here, or this sentence here. So for right now, I would probably cut those sentences. My life felt so empty and alone without him. After some time, this should be 2 words, I decided it was time to move on. So we've got time twice. Also, some time is really vague. So if we're saying I'd been a widow for 3 years, you could say after 2 years alone, I decided it was time to move on. And maybe changing move on to find someone new, because I don't know, I have never lost a spouse, so I have to speak hypothetically here, but I would imagine that you don't ever just move on. I mean, you do clearly, but you're going to always hold that person. So maybe it would be more like find someone new, because you're always going to hold that lost person in your heart. Again, grain of salt, take what works for you, leave what doesn't. I tried several dating sites, but I kept getting catfished. I finally decided to try one more site. So again, this is summary, and you can absolutely work this into later details in the story of maybe when you're having your first conversation with Destiny, you can say, oh, I tried so many different sites before I found you, or all of this. And then to go into, I did meet one guy, Vince, who seemed to have a wonderful personality. We had a few dates in my house when the boys were out. In my mind, this story is going to continue with Vince, who is not the late husband, is not the current husband. And I'm wondering, is his story really important right here? Or can you layer in the details later of like, I tried different sites, I tried dating different guys. It was Destiny who finally caught my attention. So the gist of this page is that you were widowed in 2022, and then you finally decided to find someone new, and that was how you met your husband, Destiny. You had some trouble with the dating sites because you don't really know who you're talking to when you're on them. My suggestion is, again, ground us in the scene work as much as you can. I would start here. It's late April 22. I remember because get us into a specific scene. And again, this is not the best wording right here. I remember because that's more of just a prompt to you to consider like what specifically was happening on that day. And then once you start talking about like maybe you log onto the dating site and you connect with this guy, Destiny, and then you're not sure. That's when you would that's when you would say, he seemed too perfect. I had been catfished many times before by people stealing photos and creating fake profiles. I just didn't know if I could trust him. Like, let those details unfold in order, but start as grounded in a scene. All right, so that's our first page Friday live first page edit. I hope you gained something from it. If you would like to submit your page for review, remember there is a link in the notes for this episode, and you can send your page in, and we have a lot of them to get through, but sooner or later we'll get to yours, and I would love to look over it for you. Happy writing, my friends.